I want to say we're in the same time zone.
I'm in. It's 8 o'clock right now for me.
Same.
Perfect. So I'm not. Every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, "Oh, how's your evening going?" And they're like, "Oh, it's daytime for me." But no, it's
Yeah, we
nice.
got the same thing going on.
So how's your evening going?
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. I did some writing earlier today, so I always like to get it done usually every other day at least. So got that done, so I'm happy, and now I'm just chilling out.
Hey, man, perfect segue into. Uh, I listen. Like I tend to have a whatchamacallit. I listen to everybody's different. Um, Man, I can't speak today. It's 8
No,
p.m. for sure.
yeah,
I
it's
look
fine.
into everybody's content. So I look at their websites, I look at their social media,
Hmm.
I check out their books, I read whatever I can find. I find out you're a wrestling fan.
Hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
and you know, so I was listening to the podcast episode on YouTube from Cinnabar Moth, where
Yep.
you talk to them about your book. So uh,
Yes.
I got a pre introduction to what you sounded like. So I do all those little things. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's that's how I do my little prep beforehand. But most of the time it's fairly light chat. I remember you were emailing me. You're like, I'm a little concerned. I haven't really done this all too much, but
Yeah.
it's I'm you know it's for me it's like we're having a chat over coffee at the table, and it's
Yeah, it's a new challenge for me because I like you mentioned the Cinnabar Moth interview, that was all like I had the questions ahead of time. So it was I tried not to sound too scripted, So this is actually kind of better because it's challenging me to be a little more off the cuff, which is nice, actually.
I when I started doing the podcast, it was audio only, and that was a couple of
Hmm.
years ago. And then things happen and stopped the podcast because of health issues because I had a concussion. But
Mm.
and then and when I started, I wrote questions down. Like, I'm gonna ask this person this, and I
Hmm.
felt like it's too rigid because most people just want to feel like they're talking to you or sitting with you while they're listening to whatever or
Mm.
watching in this sense. So I go through the flow. I look at everything, and I just we ask the general questions like, how did you get into writing, or how'd you do this? So we'll go there. You're born and raised in Long Island,
Yes.
and you started writing, bro, essentially start writing since you were 18, and you wrote your first book. So
Yep.
so writing has always been one of those things. And in terms of your day to day, do you work in writing, or is there something else you're doing while you're writing on the side?
Yeah, my day to day actually, I work as a pharmacy technician, so I'm in pharmacy, which I actually like. I like doing it. I like helping people, helping them solve overly complicated problems with insurances and all that. So that's my day to day. And then when I'm not working, I try to write when I can in the evenings. Every other day, usually I'll get a few hours in, and that's where I try to fit it in at least.
Right. And then your 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 book that just came out, and that you're
Mhm.
with Cinnabar Moth.
Yes.
How did that come to be? Was that something that was something in the works from when you were 18, or it just kind of came out recently and you've been writing for the last couple of years?
Yeah, yeah. So my first book when I was 18, I actually did have an agent on that project.
Oh,
And we got pretty far, but basically what happened was she left, she had her own agency and she had to leave that and go to another firm. Like she closed her firm to join another firm, which in the process, the new firm couldn't take on my project basically. So
oh,
it didn't work out. So I was actually pretty depressed at that point. I was 18, I was a kid, basically. So I stopped writing for I think maybe a decade at that point. And then I picked it back up with a new topic because I found a new topic that really interested me. So I picked it back up. So I found Cinnabar Moth in 2019, I believe it was. And I found them on Twitter, actually, I believe, funnily enough, which I was always hesitant to join, but I finally did. And then from there, yeah, we started talking. They liked the book idea, so I pitched it to them. And then basically, it took quite a while to tweak and edit some things, fix it up a
hmm.
little bit, and then it came out, just this past December, actually. So it did, yeah, as you can see, it took a while.
Well, sometimes things take a little bit more seasoning, and
Hmm.
whatever it is need to be done. Were they help you with the edits when going through the
Yeah.
process?
Oh yeah, they helped me quite a bit actually. Yeah, they helped me really trim it down. It was actually a lot longer when I first wrote it, so I had to cut out some things, which is good and bad at times. You obviously want to leave in some things that you're fond of, but sometimes for the strengthening of the story, so to speak, you want to trim out some details. So they helped me a lot with that actually. Yeah, they were really good.
That's great to hear because not too many publishers are great. Even small publishers, medium publishers, they're not
Mhm.
great with those nitty-gritty things and taking you through the process. So at least that's a positive thing to hear that it was a great experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's get into the book and tell us a little bit about this. It's called With God We Burn.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about the story without giving too much of the details away.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the pitch is actually very easy. The pitch is what got me to get it so far in the process early on, which was basically I pitch it as Romeo and Juliet meets the Crusades. So you have a young Christian knight who goes to war initially thinking he's doing the right thing, and it takes basically a Muslim girl's wisdom to show him that he's wrong, and they also fall in love. So obviously all of the problems that come about for the both of them through that. Um, I wouldn't really call it a romance book per se, though. Like my publisher actually went ahead and pitched it as historical romance, which I think is it's not the entire story. The love story is very integral, but it's kind of a coming of age of this Christian knight as he realizes he's wrong and he goes through the whole it follows the first crusade very closely, so it's pretty historical in that sense. So it's
Mhm.
partly a coming of age story and partly a love story, I would say.
And in terms of putting that together for the timeline, did you have to do any background research to kind of iron out some details or?
Yeah, the history was actually probably the most complicated part of of getting the book ready because there were parts of it that were let's say the Crusades are a delicate period. As you might imagine, it's a very delicate time period for the faiths. So it was a lot of figuring out how to get things to be accurate while also being sensitive enough into our current day standards, which as you might say, I'm not sure if you agree, but maybe we're a little more, sensitive at times than we need to be, but that's okay. So I had to kind of adjust things in that sense.
Yeah, I know I would say we're too sensitive. And my father, I grew up in a kind of a mixed Italian English household where
Hmm.
everybody was tough as nails and they kind of like
Yeah.
just you break it, you fix it, or do things by yourself and suck it up type of mentality. So and ironically, I'm a teacher, so I kind of it's like I got a mix of that balance where
Hmm.
you're trying to adhere to the sensitivity of people and stuff, but I know what you're saying. But
Yeah.
so you got through the manuscript. Cinnabar Moth helped you get everything done.
Hmm.
And in terms of the book cover, like who designed the book cover?
Oh yeah, so actually Cinnabar hired her. Her name is Ira. I think it's Genevieve. I think her
Hmm?
name is. But she was great. Yeah, she actually helped me with the cover so much. I kind of pitched to her my idea, and then she proceeded to give me some other suggestions along with doing basically what I wanted exactly. So she was great. She helped me with a lot of different things, and we settled on this cover, which I'm pretty happy with. But yeah, she was a great artist, so it was great.
It really has those layers. It's simple, but it has contrast. So
Hmm.
you really get the I guess that feeling of turmoil because they're kind of surrounded by everybody in between everything in the front and the back.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
like it. So the religious conflict and in terms of notes and or themes that are in it, there's genocide, there's blood, there's murder, there's mental
Yeah.
health, there's kidnapping, there's all kinds of stuff, and
Yes.
and obviously the love story stands out. It's like more than anything else. I mean, that's the whole
Hmm.
point. They fall in love, right? So,
Yes.
in terms of the publication stuff, like you've had it. It's in EPUB form. It's hardcover. It's
Hmm.
paperback. Was that something you envisioned? I think the market's kind of dictating ebooks for everything now.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was my dream was always to kind of have that traditional experience of having the hard copy book in bookstores and all that. And I still am working on that because Cinnabar Moth, they're kind of an up and coming company. They're still growing. I think when I first was working with them, they had I think 5 authors, and now even a couple years later, they have I think it's probably well over 100 at this point. So they're growing. I don't think they have quite the sway to get into like a Barnes and Nobles per se here in the States. But I'm working on that. But yeah, but you can still order the hard copy. It's great to have it in your hand. I really love that, and that's kind of always been the dream.
Yeah, I've been following them for a while, and now that you mentioned that, I remember when I don't I either I started following them or they follow me first. It's hard to say at this point, but
Hmm.
on Twitter, and they've come a long way. They have a lot of authors now, including yourself,
Yes.
and that's actually a good thing because in terms of growth as a as an author, if you get a place that really cares about your work and you've had a good experience, if they
Mhm.
grow and do and they're successful, then it's also your success, that thing type of thing in terms of like who was telling me this recently? Actually, one of my older episodes in season three, where an author in the
Mhm.
UK
Mhm.
who had a similar experience, and the publisher was starting to reach out into uh because there was legalities behind it, other
Right.
book vendors and stuff, and they were like, we're getting their book. So it was great for him. He was like so excited. So I imagine it's something similar like that. But so that's super. And actually, in terms of the Barnes and Noble stuff, it's actually on pre-order for Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, you can get it on the website. I don't think I've gone to my local store, and it's like, from what I understand, you have to pay a pretty penny to actually have the book on the on the shelves. So that's something that,
Yeah.
that'll take some time. But yeah, you can still order it. They have it on the website, which is great. I mean, believe me, I'm thrilled. So
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
it's a great.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are local. I mean, you're with the publisher, but there are times where I know of indie authors. They
Mhm.
go and they try to make a deal with the with local bookstores or their local. Like we have chapters here, right? Chapters Indigo, and
Mhm.
they try to like, can we for if you
Yeah.
sell, then we make money type of thing. But
Mhm.
I mean, it's not always the case. But that's cool. It's on Amazon as well,
Yep.
and Smashwords, which is ironically, I've never heard of Smashwords, but that's you have your ebook on there. So um
Yes, that was new to me as well. I hadn't heard of Smashwords either, actually, to be honest. So that's cool. Learn
yeah,
something new.
hey, I learn something new every day.
Mhm.
And so that's out, and obviously writers, what they like to do is they're always got a million projects. So you have your book, it's out. We hope for some long-term success.
Yes.
Are you working on anything else in the meantime?
Oh yeah, yep. So the that book, I'm working on my eighth novel. So with Gawi Burn is actually my third book in the timeline. My second book, which is called Civilization Zero, is part of a five-book series now. And on the first book, I actually have an agent. His name is Justin Bell. He works over at Spectrum Literary Agency in New York, and he's been awesome. He's trying to hook me up with another book deal for that series, and I'm pretty hopeful that sometime this year that's going to happen. So I'm just kind of waiting on that, which publishing can be a little slow, as you might imagine. So, but that's fine. We'll get there. So yeah.
In terms of the finding your agent, a lot of people tell me it's super difficult to find an agent. Did you have the same experience?
To be honest, I wouldn't say I lucked out. I don't really know if I believe in luck so much, but my neighbor actually knew someone at a publisher
Okay.
who this was a different publisher. This is Blackstone Publishing. So she set me up with him. He liked Civilization Zero quite a bit, but he told me I needed an agent. So I was a bit puzzled. I was like, okay, I'll have to. I just started running around looking for an agent, but then I talked to him again, and he actually set me up with Justin over at Spectrum. So for me, it was kind of, a friend of a friend. So I think that's usually how it goes. It helps if you have a connection to set you up with someone at a publisher. Otherwise, you could be trying to get one for a while, it seems like.
Well, I'm happy you did get one because that's what everybody tells me. It's literally impossible to get somebody, especially an agent that really likes your work and likes you and really
Yeah.
wants to push for it because otherwise they can just be like, I don't know what to do with this
Yep.
and there's so many authors out there right now, but that's great. And so that's the book, that's your agent.
Hmm.
You're on Instagram. Uh
Yes.
Josh G Lang.
Hmm.
Lang
That's
with
right.
an Lang with an E at the end.
Yes.
And you're on Twitter, Joshua Lang 170, which I just
Hmm.
followed you by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yep. I'll get you
And
back.
in terms of that, I wanted to ask you, I think you're on Facebook as well.
Hmm.
So there's that. And because I saw I have to ask because I keep running into people. They're like, "Oh, you watch wrestling?" I'm like, "I used to watch a lot of wrestling."
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, "Now, not so much because it's kind of. I think the landscape's changed." But I mean, who's number one? Who's your favorite wrestler?
Well, when growing up, Hogan was a little earlier than when I was watching, but my initial favorite was Bret Hart. I always loved Bret Hart, Canada's own, of course.
Yeah,
And nowadays, yeah, like you said, it's a bit the landscape has changed. Right now, I probably my favorite is he's in AEW, so he's not in WWE. His name is Jay White.
yeah.
He's just such a lovable dirtbag, and I just have such a fondness for heels in wrestling, the bad guys, and he's just such a dirtbag that I love him. That's all I can say about him. So
AEW was here not long ago in Montreal.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. So yes, yes.
one a student at school was like, "Oh, I'm going to the AEW show," and she was so
Hmm.
excited. And I said, "Well, enjoy it." And it's really AEW's kind of, I think, picked up steam in that sense. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I watch, but it's, I mean, the storylines. A lot of the wrestlers are almost cookie cutter, and
yeah,
they
yeah,
just kind of, the storylines are the same, and the moves are like there's like 1,000 moves instead of just like 20. There's no Bret Harts anymore. Like nobody's
yeah. Right.
selling the stuff, right? So.
Yes, it's definitely it's evolved athletically. I would say it's very very athletic and almost to a point of like these guys who are like about 30 years old and they're so broken down that it's amazing they're even getting up in the morning. I guess, which I if you're more of a Bret Hart, you'd probably preserve your body a little longer. I would guess that would be the goal. But they
Well,
just yeah they give everything now. So
yeah, I mean, look at Chris Jericho. That guy, he had mentioned
yeah
it a long time ago that he
yeah.
has changed his diet and he was doing like DDP yoga and stuff, and that
Hmm.
was helping him with his back issues. But the guy's 50 or 50-ish, still wrestling part-time. Or
Yeah,
then you look at guys like John Cena who are like animals, and they just, I mean, they're probably on something. I don't know.
it could be.
I can't say, but not, wrestling's not for everybody. But
No.
outside of that, I mean, I was looking at a couple different things, and you also wrote that you just finished a biography of a 96-year-old businessman.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, sure. So this was another case of a friend of a friend, but a friend of my father's. They worked together in the music business, and so her father's named Raymond Gucciardo. He was, yeah, a successful businessman. And initially, my this friend of a friend wanted my dad to write the biography, which he wasn't quite up to it at the time, so he actually passed it along to me. So yeah, so it was kind of a new experience. I've never done nonfiction to this point. I've only done fiction. So we started talking, Ray and I, and we kind of hit it off. And then yeah, I just spent, I want to say, somewhere in the range of 20 hours talking to him over a few weeks and just wrote the bio. It ended up being, I think, something like 100 pages, maybe. It wasn't too long, which I think you can get pretty involved in that stuff. But
Hmm.
the way that Ray was telling me the story was very much kind of allowed it to be about 100 pages. So that's done, and I think the family is still deciding if they want to do self-publishing or if they really want to try and do what I did and go for a traditional route. But I kind of left it in their hands because just because I'm working on so many other things right now. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a blast.
That's really cool that you got to experience that. I
Oh
mean, can
yeah.
imagine you just taking lots of notes, just sitting talking about it, and then I listen. You already got picked up by a publisher. I imagine it's fantastic, and it came out really well. And I hope
Yeah.
I hope they publish it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure I think they'll
yeah.
decide soon. So
I just want to ask, because you wrote that you have a love for space and UFOs.
yes.
What's your take on the UFO situation that they keep talking about in the US?
Yeah, I mean it's a can of worms for sure, but I think it's the most interesting story in human history. I'll be honest. I think it's kind of going to be the biggest thing. And when you have so many credible people coming out now, like of course David Grush is kind of the most popular guy right now. He basically was the number one intelligence official in the whole U.S. at one point, and he's talking about how we have this advanced technology. We've downed extraterrestrial vehicles, and we have their dead bodies stored away. I mean, it's incredible. It's like I don't know how you can't see it as at least interesting enough to want to research and figure out what's going on. It's incredible. So
It's almost like as if they were trying to desensitize us to the whole idea through movies. So when we got to the point where they can tell us that, when they tell us, we're going to be like, "Where are they? We expected this already. Like, what's going
yeah,
on?"
I think there's plenty of evidence of like yeah that them going to Disney or in the early days in the 30s and 40s they went to Disney and tried to do the Little Green Men movies, try to make us think it was a joke. And I mean, what better way to cover a secret, right, than making it a topic of ridicule? What better way to hide everything? And I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think and we're in that, I think that funnel.
Hmm.
Like, when a water bottle is about to explode, it's coming out. It's all pressure is always coming up to the
Sure,
top.
yeah,
We're
sure, sure.
right now in society with everything going on. We're at that point where it's going to happen, and all the information about this and this and this is going to come out. So, um, I hope we find out soon, because I don't want to turn 70 and find out. I'd rather find out tomorrow.
I honestly I feel like it's going to be soon. I feel like you said, where it feels like we're on a tipping point, and I just feel like whether they like they recently passed or tried to pass the UAP Disclosure Act, which was actually a pretty big deal. But from what it sounds like, it passed, but maybe not with everything they wanted. So, but I feel like we're just on that cusp of a major shift.
2024. That's the major
I
shift
think
for all
so.
this stuff. It's a major shift for authors, including yourself, who are going to be
Mhm.
able to publish and do all kinds of great stuff. Usually, what I do is before we wrap up, I give the guest the final word. So, and maybe in terms of writers or authors who are trying to do exactly what you're doing by getting an agent or a publisher, what kind of words of wisdom do you have for them?
Yeah, sure. Actually, well, I kind of learned early on that there's a lot of power in trusting your vision. So I think what happens is when authors will finish or they'll start working on a project, and then they'll immediately want to tell their friends, tell their parents, whoever about it. And I think what happens is when you do that, you diminish the vision a little bit because, at least in my experience, when you start to talk about your work, everyone wants to change it. Everyone wants to say, hey, you need to change this. What if you add this? What if you take that out? And for me, that really diminishes your original, that crystal, that original vision. So my advice is trust your gut, try to finish your first draft before you get any help. And then when it's done, yeah, then you seek out agents, publishers, but just believe in yourself. I think that's honestly my best piece of advice.
That's awesome. Great advice. I love it. That really applies. I write poetry. That
Yeah,
also applies to poetry because you don't. Every time you show it to somebody, you're kind of like hesitant. But then when they look at it, they're like, I would change this, but it changes the whole meaning or changes
exactly.
the outlook and stuff. But that's awesome. With God We Burn by Joshua Lange. It's out. It's on Amazon. It's through Cinnabar Moth Publisher. You can check them out too. And follow Joshua on all his social medias. And man, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute blast.
Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've already know, yeah. I think that we've already know. Sick of dealing with
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the Mr. Mike Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to your platform of choice. For more updates and exclusive content, visit our website at www.mrmikemtl.com. Stay relaxed, stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.